Good morning, everybody. Okay, I guess it's early in the morning, but it's certainly past 8:30, so we will get started. I'm Anjan Bose. I'm the chair of the executive board of PSCC, and in real life, I'm a professor at Washington State University, and I teach power engineering. I wanted to welcome everybody to Porto. We've been waiting a long time to get here because the conference was supposed to be physically here in Porto 2 years ago, and that went virtual. And because everybody still wanted to come to Porto, we decided to have this conference here for which we thank the University of Porto and the Faculty of Engineering. To open the conference, I'm going to ask the conference president, Professor Göran Andersson, who doesn't need much of an introduction because he's been a leader of PSCC for many, many decades and is now retired, his last position from ETH. And so, Göran, please.
So, friends and colleagues, good morning and a warm welcome to the 22nd PSCC. When I got the question if I wanted to be the president of this conference, it took about 3 nanoseconds before I said yes. PSCC has been a central part of my professional life, so I feel very honored to stand here today. And I'm glad, and I believe you are too, that we can meet in person again. Even if the online conference 2 years ago kept the PSCC community alive, but to be honest, it's not the same as a real physical conference. This is not the first time PSCC physically takes place in Portugal. The first time was in 1987, when the 9th PSCC was held in Cascais, close to Lisbon. We are a few here today that attended that conference, and even the leading organizer is sitting here in the audience. But I see many in the audience that by age reasons cannot possibly have been at PSCC in Cascais. A special welcome I want to express to those of you that attend your first PSCC. From now on, you are also members of the PSCC family. I recall that Professor Mike Lawton, a well-known PSCC icon and nestor, at one of the PSCCs in the 1990s, it could have been in Graz or in Avignon, made a forecast based on the enrollment and examination in power engineering in the UK universities. His forecast was gloomy. The power engineer will be an extinct species by 2020, 2030, he said. And he was not the only one that came to that conclusion. The spirit in the power community was at that time quite dire. His prediction was obviously wrong when I look out here to you in the audience. And I'm sure that Mike Lawton is glad today that he was wrong back then. I conclude when looking at you that the power engineer is still alive and also thriving. In the first decade of this century, we saw a tremendous revival of the electric power sector by reasons we all know: sustainability, climate concern, security of supply, etc., became leading items on the political agenda. It became clear that electrification of new sectors such as transportation, heating, different process industries, etc., was the most effective means to reach the sustainability goals put up, for instance, by the Paris Agreement. That the electric power system will be the backbone of the future energy system is today an axiom. But this meant also new challenges that researchers and engineers had to tackle. The research in power system was broadened and new methods and techniques were employed to develop new solutions. The rapid development in information and communication technology was another driver for new research. A key reason, I think, why PSCC has continued to play an important role in power system research is that we have quickly adapted to new requirements and needs and has thus been able to attract new and talented researchers into the field. Young people with new ideas have been given the possibility to influence the content of the conferences, which is a key reason for PSCC's success. But still, the basic value and culture, together with a long experience within PSCC, has held it on a steady course. Now we face an exciting week, where a lot of interesting and stimulating scientific presentations and discussions will take place. I know that you have all high expectations, and I hope they will be fulfilled. However, remember that the conference is not only paper presentations. The coffee breaks, lunches, and the social events are excellent occasions to interact and discuss with new colleagues, which is a good way to broaden your horizon and perhaps come up with new ideas and cooperations. A conference like this does not materialize by itself. A lot of hard work from numerous people made this week possible, and we owe them a very big thank. First, the local organizing committee, which has been chaired by Professor João Peses Lopes, have made all the practical arrangements regarding rooms, coffee break, lunches, excursions, etc. That's a tremendous work. Anyone who has been involved in the organization of a conference knows that this is really an achievement that they have made. The technical program has been worked out by the Technical Program Committee under the leadership of Professors Daniel Molsen and Federico Milano. You will hear more about these committees' activities and work later on in this session. A thank should also be given to the sponsors of the conference. Their support is very important and also a sign that PSCC and its work is appreciated by the power industry. With these words, I welcome you once more and wish you all a stimulating, fruitful, and enjoyable week here in Porto. Thank you very much.
As I told you, the host for this conference is the University of Porto, especially the Faculty of Engineering. And to welcome you here is the Dean of the Faculty of Engineering at the University of Porto, Professor João Falcao y Cunha.
Good morning, and I'm going to repeat welcome to FEUP, to the School of Engineering at the University of Porto, and to Porto. It's a great pleasure to welcome all of you here, and I would say hello also to the colleagues who are organizing this committee, in particular my colleague, and with the same name, which is difficult to pronounce in other languages, but you did it very well, João. If I have time, I could tell you a story why FEUP, this School of Engineering, traces its origin to Napoleon. But I will not have time because it's a long story, but perhaps João can explain you during break time. But we trace our back to the Polytechnic Academy of Porto, which was created about 200 years ago. We are a School of Engineering. We have about 10,000 people around here. Most of them are students. And we have a strong interaction with the research institutes and research units, in particular with Inesc Tech, that is also hosting this event. And we are about 1/4 of the university. In fact, we are the largest school of the university. The university is about 40,000 students. It covers most of the areas. It doesn't have, for instance, fine arts like dancing, theater, but we have here at FEOP an orchestra with students, mostly students from engineering, but also from other parts. So we have a very active participation of students in most activities and in research as well. I would like also to say that we've been talking before, and instead of asking questions later, I'll ask a question now because no one could answer it. Perhaps someone in the audience can, and this is because I also like history. And as you know, the electric current is 50 Hertz in Europe and 60 Hertz in the United States. And I was trying to find out why 50 and why 60. It's not why different, but what was the reason why it was decided to be 50 in Europe and 60 in the United States. So this is my question for you. If you know the answer, you can tell João. Okay, so I'm not going to say more. You are welcome, of course. I hope you will have time to enjoy Porto. Port wine. It's not in Porto. It's in the next city across the river, but there are several bridges, so you can cross them and go there and buy wine if you want, if you can drink wine. Of course, some people cannot drink. But I will finish saying that the most important thing, I think, is that we learn something new and something important to help us change and to help us change society. And as Einstein is said to have said, imagination is more important than knowledge because imagination has no limits. So I hope that you have, because you are thinking about challenges for the future, it has to start with imagination and then perhaps something more important and more useful than what we know now will be created. And many of you here, and Professor who's chairing this conference, I'm sure, many contributions because he had the imagination and the creativity and then the work, because it's a lot of work that is necessary to make things happen. But so, hope you have a good time here and enjoy Porto, enjoy the School of Engineering and enjoy the conference. Thank you very much and have a good time.
So now I'll call on the other Professor Joao, who is actually the chair of the local organizing committee. And he's had the pleasure of being the chair of the local organizing committee for 4 years instead of the usual 2. So for that, we'll bring him up here.
Okay, perfect. So, good morning to all of you. I also want to say that it's for me a great pleasure to receive you in Porto and at the Faculty of Engineering of the University of Porto. And as it has been said before, I'm chair of the local organizing committee for 4 years in a row. Because we tried to organize PSCC in 2020, but all of you know what happened. The COVID outbreak forced us to organize the event in an online mode. Fortunately, we are here today, and I'm very happy to welcome you. And let me start by telling you that I was one of the attendees of the PSCC in Cascais in 1987. And I was at that time a young PhD student, and I remember that I made a presentation where the chair of my session was Professor Ajahn Bose, also sharing this session today. So what a coincidence. So I'm really happy to welcome you, and I would like just to say a few words about the organization of the event here in Porto. So the venue is Faculdade de Engenharia da Universidade do Porto, in Portuguese, FEUP. So you already know the place. This is where we are, the main building. So this is the auditorium where we are at the moment. So several sessions will take place in this auditorium. Then lunches, coffee breaks, they will be outside in the gardens of the faculty. If you take the corridor, and on the left side you have the gardens, so you can go for the gardens, and then you have a tent where lunches will be served, as well as coffee breaks. Just to let you know, perhaps it's not that easy to identify, but the other sessions that will take place in rooms B001, B002, B003, they are those red buildings marked in the map. And so we are, I would like to have the mouse. I don't have the mouse. Okay, anyway, it would be good if I could have the, okay, good. Good, fine. Can I have the mouse? Okay, so we are here, and you take this corridor, and the other rooms where the other sessions, parallel sessions will take place is here. So this is the garden, and this is the place where the tent with the lunches will be served. Okay, social events, because social events are really, really very important in a conference like this one, and we are very happy to interacting again. So the welcome reception will take place today afternoon, after the sessions, and it will be in Palácio da Bolsa, downtown, near the river. And so we will have the welcome reception, and we will have also the opportunity to visit the Salão Arab, which means Arab Salon. And it will be also a very nice opportunity to see part of the recent history of the city of Porto. Then we have a boat excursion in the River Douro on a Wednesday. By the way, let me tell you that all buses, we are providing buses to take you from here to the places where all the events take place. We have buses leaving from here, from nearby the faculty, just in front of the main building where we are. And so for the boat excursion, there will be also buses leaving after the sessions end according to the program. And so we will take a boat in one of the harbors in the river. And so we will go up the river and then come down again, and we will finish by disembarking in this place, in the Ribeira, in this area. So for the gala dinner, so the gala dinner will take place in Alfândega, the old costumes house in Porto. And this is a very nice place. You will see the environment is very, very interesting. So for the social events, so the dinner will take place on the first floor, and you have the access. The access to the building is and to the room is made according to what is described here. You have to go up some stairs, and so the dinner will take place here. And I would like to tell you that the weather forecast is excellent. So we will have a very, very good weather, which is very important also. I can assure you that last week, for instance, it has been raining, and this week is fantastic. So enjoy the city of Porto, enjoy the conference, and thank you very much for attending the event.
Okay, I should mention that there's a organizing committee behind all the things that Joao talked about, and that's listed in the booklet. And that which brings us to the technical program committee, who brings you all the technical part of the program, and there's an even bigger cast of reviewers and people who handle all the work with the papers. And so, and in fact, you know, it is a bigger job because we have two people on the podium who has to talk about this because we have a technical program committee chair, which is Professor Daniel Molzan from Georgia Tech in the US, and the vice chair is Professor Federico Milano from the University of College of Dublin. So let me talk. As you can imagine, the chair actually delegates the work to the vice chair, and the vice chair then delegates it to the multiple reviewers and other people on the committee. So Dan, you want to talk first?
No, thanks, Engin. And you think that's a joke. That's not a joke. That is, in fact, how it works. So I was the vice chair for the PSCC 2020. And of course, we had the challenge of turning that from an in-person conference here at Porto to an online conference under pretty short notice. And in fact, we had the opportunity to do the full circle in a remote fashion, given that my last sort of major traveling event was to the technical program committee meeting in January of 2020. And this year, or earlier this year, we had hoped to have the technical program committee meeting in person, but we're unable to do that. So we had a full cycle of remote activities for the technical program committee. And so, again, I want to, as Anjan mentioned, I want to thank all of the program committee members, many of whom I see in the audience. They did a tremendous amount of work and were very flexible in how we handled all the technical planning activities. But again, as Anjan mentioned, Federico was really the driving force behind this conference. And so he'll present our activities and some statistics from the program this week.
Okay, so good morning. It has been a long journey to get here, and yeah, it was kind of a lot of work, but at least I thought that it was going to be a lot of work, but then at the end is the TPC members and the reviewers that made the most of it. So my job here now is to say thank you to the TPC members and all the reviewers and all the authors that are here. I know that most of you have done the three things, so thank you. So I'm also here to give a few numbers and some information on the technical program. You know well, this is a conference that welcomes theoretical papers and also computational aspects, but also applications, and we try to, in the program, to cover all these aspects. We have done a contribution on analytical techniques and modeling. The topics are growing. There are more challenges in the power system, so we have been expanding to, for example, transportation, electric vehicles, energy systems recently. So I think that the program covers all these aspects. We have so 4 main areas to cover: the assessment of the system, and then the modeling, the integration of operation and communication technologies, data analysis. And then we accept different kinds of papers, research papers, but also applications and the case studies with industry perspective as well. Okay, so just to give you an idea of what was going on behind the scenes, we had kind of long journey through the review process. It starts with a call for papers more than a year ago now. And then after that, there is the submission of the abstracts, the review and acceptance of the abstracts, and then the submission of the papers. So that was about October, the end of September, October 21. And then it starts the actual review, which is the heavy duty for the TPC. So assignation of the papers to the TPC members and then to the reviewers. Here I have some statistics. So we had a lot of papers, a lot of abstracts as well. It's not the highest number ever, but still very high, more than 1,000 abstracts. And then 671 full paper submissions that have to be assigned to TPC members and then to reviewers. So you can imagine the amount of people involved in this process. This is just to give you an idea how the what is the spread of the first author affiliations of the abstract. Is PSCC, one of the things that I'm happy about is that PSCC is becoming more, it's always been, but is the presence of America and South America and Asia, Australia is increasing. It has always been considered a European conference, but it's becoming truly a worldwide conference, more and more at least. We had 58 TPC members. This includes also Dan and myself, so basically 56 TPC members that did the hard work of taking care of the review of the papers. 25 new members with respect to 2020. And then as you see, about 1,400 reviewers. So a lot of people. I know that some of these reviewers are here. Thank you. And this is also the coverage of the work coverage of the TPC members, which again, we tried to make it more wider and to cover better North America, Australia, South America as well, and Asia. And these are, unfortunately, they're very small, but these are all the names of the people. You can find them in the flyer and in the booklet that has been distributed at the desk. Yes, some more statistics. This relates to the number of reviews that each paper received. So the central column is 3 reviews, and then 76, about 77% of the papers received at least 3 reviews or more, not counting the TPC member comments and opinion. So that means there was an additional review on top of that. And for I think about 150 papers were specifically discussed at the TPC meeting. So all those papers were reviewed by another TPC member. So this is really, I think, one of the conferences with the most of the reviews for the papers. The acceptance ratio is almost exactly 1/3. Now, the point is that the conference accepts a fixed number of papers, so this is really a metric of how many papers were submitted, not really the quality of the papers. But, you know, the more the submissions, the tougher is the competition, and the more complicated it is to get the paper accepted. So for those that got the paper accepted, it's really a big achievement. Yeah, this is the organization, the review process. I already discussed it, but basically it's me assigning the papers to the TPC members and then TPC members to reviewers. And then at the TPC meeting, we discuss papers that needed a little bit more discussion. Now, for the second year, for the second time, also in 2020, the accepted papers that are also presented at the conference are going to end in a special issue of the Elsevier journal Electric Power System Research. And then they are also going to be part of the proceedings of the PSCC. This is, I think, one of the reasons also why there has been more submissions in the last two editions of the PSCC. Again, some statistics on the word coverage of the accepted paper, better than last edition, so we're happy. And you have the booklet with the program. It's also online, but just to remember, there are 40 sessions of papers, and then 2 survey papers, 1 tutorial and 1 round table that happened yesterday. And then on Friday, there is a panel session. So yeah, this happened yesterday, so I'm not going to discuss this, but in the following days, there will be 2 special plenary sessions for the survey papers. One is on stochastic optimization, and the other one is, we call it from macro to micro, but it's basically the granularization of the system. And then the final panel session on Friday is going to be on automated system operation. So yeah, just saying thank you, and I'm really happy to be here.
Okay, now for the main part of this session, it has become almost a tradition for PSCC to be welcomed by somebody from the grid of that country. And so I want to present to you our keynote speaker today. His name is Antonio Albino Marquez. He's with Rede Eléctrica Nacional, which is REN, as we call it, is the grid. And I'm not going to read all his bio data because I'd rather you hear from him, use that time. But he has 2 degrees from the University of Porto, so that's important. And then since 2014, he has been the chief system operator of REN. So he is one of us. We talk the same language. So with that, I'll turn it over to Mr. Marquez.
Thank you very much, Professor, for your introduction. Welcome to Porto. Colleagues, let me call you that. I'm going to make a presentation to give you an overview of the electricity power system of Portugal and what happened and what is our vision for the next future. Well, I will present you these 5 topics. So an overview of our electricity system. One of our main challenges that I can now say that we already overcome, the integration of an extremely large percentage of renewables in the power system. What is the impact on security of supply? And I will show you some real cases from real life with what happened in some extreme situations. And finally, a few takeaways. Well, the Portuguese electricity system, we are a small country in Europe, of course, but we have a very, I would say, a very well-mixed power system with a lot of renewables. And you can see we have a lot of hydro. In the map, you can see the green ellipses. They are the main rivers of our country, where are the hydropower stations, mainly in the north. We have a lot of wind power. We have also, of course, some CHP units, and we do not yet have a very large share of solar, but it's booming now, and it will increase a lot in the following years. And of course, in non-renewable, we have coal. We don't have anymore any coal power station in Portugal. The last one closed in October last year. And we have 4 CCGT power stations that are still very important as a backup for our mainly renewable system. Well, this is our country. Our installed power is around 20 gigawatt, and our peak load is a little bit less than 10 gigawatt. The transmission grid. The transmission grid is in the map. We have the standard voltages of the European system, 400 kV, 220, and also a small sub-transmission grid of 150, with a total more or less 9,000 kilometers of overhead lines and cables mainly in the big cities like Porto and Lisbon. And this is very important. We are very well interconnected with the Spanish system. We have 9 interconnections. You can look at it in the map. The red ones are 400 kV overhead lines, and the green ones are 220 kV overhead lines. And our transformer capacity is also in the slide. Well, these 2 graphics, the left one is the generation capacity in the last 10 years, so you can see the evolution. You can, if you look in detail, in 2012, we still had full thermal power stations, and in 2021, we don't have any more full thermal power stations nor coal power stations. So we only have now the gas, combined cycle gas power stations. We have the hydro has increased year after year, and the wind also has increased a lot, and the solar, look, the solar, the black part is growing now, and I will show you what is expected for the future. And on the right side, you have the energy. So there you can see that we have wet years and dry years. So the share of the hydro varies a lot. And on the contrary, the wind share in the recent years is more or less constant. So I think everybody knows that. The wind is very good when we look at the energy in a year, but the issue is the intermittency in short term. And on the contrary, the hydro, we know very well what happened in the following month, but there's a big difference between the dry years and the wet years. And that's why we need the backup from the thermal power stations. And you can see that the share of non-renewable has decreased year after year, and it will continue like that in the future. The future. Well, on the left side you have the targets for the European Union. On the table you have the targets for Portugal. Our targets are equal or higher than the European ones. So this is our plan, the National Energy and Climate Plan. And if you look on the right side of the table, you will see the red figures. You can see that our target for 2030 is to increase the wind share from 5 gigawatt to 9 gigawatt, and of installed capacity, of course, and the solar from less than 1 gigawatt to 9 gigawatt. This is a tremendous change in our electricity system, and the amount of installed power in renewables will be very, very high, and the support from the thermal power stations will be needed. In my opinion, we still need that backup, but the number of hours those power stations will work will be lesser and lesser every year. The integration of renewables. Well, in the past, the electricity system has already changed. In the 80s and the 90s, we had an hydrothermal mixed system, and our issues, the things we have to deal with in the past were the fuel prices, the water management, so the hydrothermal coordination, as we called it in the past. And after that, we had the integration of renewables. The non-dispatchable generation increased a lot in the last 20 years. And now we are facing a new future, even more challenging, where we can have situations where the security of supply can suffer because we can have lack of renewables in peak load periods. And the question is, do we have enough gas for the backup CCGTs? We don't know, namely with in the following month, we don't know. And we can also have sudden loss of renewable, resource variations, storms, climate change, things. We already faced some situations where the forecast of the renewables is wrong because some extreme atmospheric phenomena happened, like dust from the desert, or like storms, very high storms, where things can change very rapidly, and the forecast is wrong, and we have to, that's where the backup is important. In this slide, I'm showing you on the right side the share of renewables in a lot of countries. So you can see that in 2020, Portugal was the 5th country in Europe and UK with higher wind generation compared with the total demand. We had a ratio of 25%. But if you look more in detail, you can see that onshore wind, we are the 3rd country in Europe and UK. We don't have yet, well, in reality, we have one experimental offshore wind park with floating, because in the Atlantic Ocean it's not possible to do it in another way. And we hope in the future to have also offshore wind floating. On the right side, you can see the growth of the wind generation since 1996 until now. And you can see the boom that we had between 2005 and 2011. There was a boom in wind, and now we are more or less stable, but our target is to increase by repowering these wind parks to increase the installed power even more. The solar capacity in Portugal, the potential is tremendous. And the investors know that. That's why we are facing an amazing amount of requests for connection to the grid. And if we sum all the requests to the grid in the distribution grid and in the transmission grid, we are already over 200 gigawatts. Yes, this is the number. It's an amazing number. Of course, it's not possible physically to connect this amount of solar, but the requests of the grid, if we sum all of them, are already in these numbers. We are in reality, some of the grid permissions were already decided, and we are sure that in 2030 we will have 9 gigawatts of photovoltaics or even more. Impacts on security of supply. Well, as you know, wind and solar generation variability requires power tools for planning and for operation. Why? Because you can see some examples of ramps, wind generation increase, wind generation decrease, the variation you can see in the graphs. And we already have some tools, but we need to develop that tools, and for that we need your research, the output of your research, that in the future will upgrade these tools, mainly taking in account the solar, where there are still a lot of work to do. And for planning, you know that we can have deterministic approach and probabilistic approach. Of course, we already are in the probabilistic approaches. We do a lot of work in this field, including a lot of work within ESC with the Faculty of Engineering. They help us to develop the tools that we use in our planning, mainly in the probabilistic approach. The security of supply, so this is well known, the balance, the 50 Hertz, the supply and demand. We have in the available generation some deterministic forecasts when we do planning, the scenarios, the outages, and we also have stochastic uncertainty in wind generation, in solar generation, in hydro generation, and in forced outages. And on the other side, on the right side, we have the demand. So we have also we use the scenarios, and we have also the stochastic uncertainty, namely because of the temperature. So in extreme cold and in extreme hot days, the demand varies a lot. In Portugal, we still have our peak demand in winter, but we are seeing that the summer demand, mainly in the south of Portugal, is also increasing a lot. So we use, of course, the probabilistic approaches with Monte Carlo sequential simulations to do this planning for the short term, medium term, and long term. This is the main software you use. This is in reality joint work between RAN and INESC Tech. And this is the tool we are using now for the studies. And it's a lot of computation, a lot of work inside. And we are now using it for the studies that we are doing now. And the outputs are very consistent. So we are very happy with this software, and a lot of things are simulated, including the grid itself, the Portuguese system, the Spanish system, the equivalent of the European system, where we are interconnected, and you can see in the slide a lot of details that are inside this software that we use for these studies. And we are using for the next winter, also now for next year and for next 10 years. Real cases. These may be interesting for you to look. Here I have a slide where I try to show the importance of the hydro pump storage. We have more than 2.7 gigawatt of installed capacity of hydropower stations with pump storage capacity, and this is one of our secrets, let me call it like that, of to accept and to integrate practically without any curtailments the amount of wind power we installed in our country, and in the future the amount of solar. You can see the graphic every hour. So the green part is the wind, the orange part is the import, the blue part is the hydro, and you can see on the right side those small graphics are 6 reversible power stations, and you can see the pumping during the night and the generation during the peak hours. And that's the way that only with that capacity we can integrate this amount, the amount of wind that you can see in the graphic, that in some hours, only the wind power output was over our consumption. And if we sum wind and hydro, and I will show other cases, it can be much, much higher than our consumption. Other challenge, other important topic is the interconnections. So being a very strongly interconnected country, we can accommodate rapid variations in the interconnections and recover the balance 15 minutes later. Our operation rule in Europe is that we must return to a balanced system in 15 minutes. But of course, if we were in Iceland, the frequency will suffer a lot. That's not the case because we are very well interconnected. So the rapid variations are absorbed by the interconnection and we recover the balance in 15 minutes. Why? Because we have the hydro. We have hydro with pump storage that I already told you, but we also have fast start hydropower stations when we can connect them to the grid in seconds. That's why we can deal with these rapid variations that are shown in the graphic, where in one day the wind went down a lot. But this depends on the forecast. These ramps are not a big problem if the forecast is correct, but they can be a real problem if the forecast is incorrect, having, for instance, phase errors. I mean, if the ramp anticipates 1 or 2 hours, or if the ramp delays 1 or 2 hours, the operators in control room are surprised with these ramps, and that's where the hydro has also a very big importance. This is the story of one of our curtailments. I can tell you it's practically the only big curtailment we did in wind in Portugal in 2017. And why? If you look at the graphic, you can see the amount of wind power we had, and that brown part is also renewable, is CHP and the cogeneration plants. So in this weekend, it was a weekend, this day, 12th of March of 2017 is a Sunday, but this also happened in the day before, in the Saturday, and with such an amount of renewables, we were not able to avoid curtailment. Why? Because we used a lot of hours, the hydro, the reversible hydro, so we exhausted the pump capacity. So even the hydropower stations with pump capacity can be exhausted, and they can be exhausted in 2 ways, where the upper dam is full or where the downstream dam is empty. And what happened in this weekend is that after we used a lot of hours the pump in Saturday to avoid curtailment, in Sunday the situation maintained, and the downstream dam was with a very low level of water, and it was not possible to maintain the pump storage. That's why we did the curtailment, but this was really an extreme situation, but it can happen. Some examples of extreme days. You can see this day in January 2015, but I could show you a lot of cases like this. If we look at the graphic, who says that the wind is intermittent? Look at it. It's very constant all day. But this is really an exception. But if you look in the right side graphic, you don't see the wind. Where is the wind? It disappeared. No wind. So that's the cases where the problems appear. And those are, of course, not very rare situations, but the security of supply and the lights must be on every day and every hour. So the system has to be prepared also to deal with these extreme situations. So in the left side, you can see that we had 4 gigawatt of sustained power during one day. And on the left side, you can see that the wind in that day was even under the solar. Extreme ramps. I already told you something about this, but more examples of extreme ramps when we can have more than 1 gigawatt in 1 hour variation, going up or coming down. And we also have to deal with these situations. Another example, this was in the press in 2016. For the first time, we were able to operate our system without any thermal power station during 4 consecutive days. We already had, after that, few cases with 2 or 3 days, but we never had again these 4 days in a row where our system was completely 100% renewable and exporting. You can see the green part is wind, 60% of the load during 4 days, and the blue part is hydro. Summing hydro and wind, we achieved 126% of the load, so we exported a lot during those days, and we can operate a system with 100% of renewables, of course. But it's rare. It's rare, and it won't happen once. But it was in the press. We don't show these cases when we don't have hydro, we don't have wind, and we don't have solar, and we are operating with a lot of CCGT. But it also happens, I can assure you. Well, the interconnections. I already told you that our system is very well interconnected. And you can see in the graphic the import and export capacity. We have, comparing this capacity with the size of our system, we are one of the countries in Europe, I would say maybe the first one, of more capacity of import-export compared with the size of the system. That's why we don't have practically no congestion in the interconnections, and the price, the spot market price between Portugal and Spain is more or less the same every day, every hour. But the Iberian Peninsula is not very well interconnected with Central Europe, and we are still, I hope it will change in the future, we are still, Portugal and Spain together, electricity island, and it's for the moment impossible to export the amount of renewables that we have installed in Portugal and in Spain, but it has to change. That has to change. And if we have more capacity to export this renewable energy from Iberian Peninsula to Central Europe could depend less of the Russian gas. Now, with the Ukrainian war, these kind of things are more visible, and that's why we need more interconnections. And I think you know there is a big interconnection being constructed between Spain and France. It's a submarine cable in the Biscay Gulf that will be in operation in 3 or 4 years. But until there, Portugal and Spain are more or less an island, and we have to operate the system as it is. On the right side of the graphic, you can see that Portugal can be an import country or export country. It depends a lot of the hydro. If you look, you can see that in 2016, 17, and 18, we were an exporting country. But In 2019, 2020, and 2021, we became an import country. It depends a lot of the amount of hydro. Well, finally, to close my presentation, a few takeaways. So, the Portuguese electricity system accommodates a relevant penetration of non-dispatchable renewable generation. The wind and solar capacity represents more than 60% of peak load and greater than 130% in some cases, if and only if hydroelectric power plants are considered. The power system mix is very relevant to accommodate wind energy and the future solar boom that we will face. And as I told you, we wait for a big higher penetration of solar in the following years. The long-term system security supply assessment, I also told you this. We are making studies of security of supply with probabilistic approaches to deal with the more and more uncertainties that we have in the system, and the output of these studies is sent to our government that decides the policies, the energy policies of the country. We are also beginning to modify the way we plan the grid, integrating also some probabilistic approaches and not only completely deterministic, like we did in the past. Of course, the grid codes, the connection grid codes of Europe apply to Portugal, but we also did a very detailed topic, and in this case also with the help of INESCTEC, to detail the technical requirements for the new generation connection to the grid. And this is very important because you know that in the past, when this renewable boom began, we did not take care of those situations, and we integrated in the system some renewable that trips in cases of short circuits, that was not able to sustain the right-through fault capability, and now things are not happening like that, and the grid codes are much more detailed and much more demanding, and the technology of the wind generation is now integrating those requirements. The flexibility needs will increase, of course, and we will have increased share of connections in the distribution grid. So we as a TSO, we also need to use, even for balancing, the flexibilities that are connected to the distribution grid. And final slide, our main near future challenges: the consumption, demand-side management, and dispersed generation, participation in the balancing and congestion managed markets. This is a challenge. TSOs were used to deal with big power stations connected to the transmission grid, big and controllable. Now we are facing a system where the big is not so big, it's smaller, and where the generation is also in a big amount connected to the distribution grid. So the tools we have to be changed. We have to be able to integrate the flexibility of those assets. The rapid growth of solar generation, decommissioning of old thermal power stations, we already did it. This is a challenge for adequacy, and this is also a challenge for lack of inertia and voltage control capability. We are already facing this voltage control capability problem, not yet the lack of inertia, because the European system is a very big one, and we still have a minimum required amount of inertia. This is, the UK and Ireland are very different, but in the future we will face this problem and we will have to find solutions for this. We also have the impact of electrical vehicles and of course the impact of the new grid size storage with batteries, and finally our goal. We have to maintain the reliability of the European interconnected system in terms of adequacy and in security of supply. And that's all. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Albino Marquez, for this nice description of the challenges facing not just Portugal, as I was thinking about it, but all over the world. As you heard and as I was hearing the phrases about uncertainties, about how to use probabilistic models to define the uncertainties, how to plan the generation for the future, especially renewable generation, and this whole concept of rethinking the connection between capacities to the actual energy that is needed, the demand, and so on. And it just kind of made me think about all the papers that we're going to listen to and you're going to present for the next few days. And these are also relevant today. So thank you again, Mr. Marquez. Let me finish up this session because we're cutting into the coffee break by essentially welcoming you all to Porto, to the rejuvenated PSCC in physically presence here from the PSCC organization. I think you heard that it takes a lot of effort of a lot of people to put these things together, and I hope you have a very enjoyable time in Porto. Thank you very much.